we've got Lyle on the far left, Andrew, Taylor, Tyson, and Tom. Look at that. Alliteration at its best. I want to jump right into throwing it to Andrew. Andrew is the one who's graciously put those horrifying graphs on the chair or table in front of you. So, Andrew, do you want to share your thoughts around sustainability? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, green is on. Perfect.
Hello, everyone. Testing 1, 2. Oh,
and you can remove your finger.
Okay, perfect. Nice to meet you all. My name is Andrew Nunez Alvarez. I am part of the Federation of Cannabis Farmers, and I'm also studying a master's in leadership at the University of Guelph. And I'm really excited to share with you a part of my draft thesis here that I'm working on supply management within the Canadian cannabis industry. So what you might see on the tables and on the chairs is directly coming from the Government of Canada's website. There is a source link at the bottom too, if you would like to verify the data. And what I truly believe is important is to recognize and acknowledge the pain points that farmers are currently experiencing in order to make sure that we can find a path for sustainable cannabis production. So a few key interpretations that I would like to share with you about this data is specifically that since legalization, according to the Government of Canada website, Canada has produced close to 75.6 million kilograms. In 2025, Canada has produced the most amount of dried cannabis flower at roughly 14.6 million kilograms. And in 2025, only 7.67% of unpackaged dried cannabis flower was actually packaged into final product packaging. So what that means is that in the system, in the workflow for cannabis producers, they would have unpackaged inventory and then would become packaged inventory to then be distributed to provincial wholesalers. So this is only data regarding dried cannabis flower. There are things that we need to consider about this data, specifically like if this dried flower input is going to be going into Cannabis 2.0 products, if it's going to be shipped overseas and exporting, but domestically, this is the data that the Government of Canada is publicly sharing with all of us. So yeah, I did want to address a bit of this in order to get the discussion going. And again, I believe it's truly important to consider the pain points in order to address a sustainable route for the cannabis industry.
And do you want to share some more of your points, or do you want to hold off a little bit longer? And I have a quick question. Do you know if those data are also broken down by province?
There is no provincial breakdown on all of this. Yes.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. And I will make my thesis publicly available to the industry, and it's very, very detailed.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. So maybe I'll jump back to you on some other points. I can't remember. Tyson, did I say you were going to speak next? Well, do you want to speak next? Sure. Okay. Yeah, just hit that one. Oh, and I just wanted to have you share your thoughts around. So Tyson, you are a consultant. You've been to many different countries doing essentially consultancy work, optimizing efficiency, I assume, with a lot of the producers. Do you want to share what you're seeing as a consultant and what you bring to that in the lens of sustainability?
Yeah, thanks. I see a lot from greenhouse. Really, really simple greenhouse to hybrid greenhouse to indoor production, really inefficient indoor production, really efficient indoor production across the board. I think we've been blessed with the HPS lights kind of being phased out of the industry, which I think inherently is good for the industry from a production standpoint and from, sustainability for sure. I think the best thing that we can do really is become as efficient as we can possibly become within our operations. And ultimately, we're nowhere near that. When we look at the facilities across the globe, they're probably underperforming by an average of 300 to 500 grams a square meter. And even more inefficient in their ability to convert that product into saleable product, right? Building inventories, write-offs, aging inventory, oxidated, inadequate storage. There's so many inefficiencies that we can gain. From a sustainability perspective, I would say that cannabis is extremely hard to be categorized as anywhere near sustainable, unless you're in Colombia or someplace equatorial that you need no lights. You can run really efficient labor, which very likely will be the future of cannabis if we look 20, 30, 40 years out into the future. But right now, the best thing that we can do is try and hone in our operations, try and gain the efficiencies through any of the technologies that we have, but really operational efficiencies.
Right. When you say that, like, is there one particular one that you keep seeing at every facility? You think, man, where you're overproducing, or you're not producing at a high enough, cost. Your cost of production is too high, or is there any common element that you
I would say that the common element is not growing the quality that their commercial teams expect, and then the commercial teams maybe hiding behind the guise of that being an excuse to not be able to move the product that inevitably becomes a write-off, right?
Okay.
So inadequate light, insufficient crop work, all of these things end up with really loose flower, exponential smalls ratios,
right?
Right. And so then now you have, say, 40% large grade A out of an entire lot, and it's questionable what they're doing with the smalls at this point, right? So the inventories that are building are kind of the smalls.
Hi, folks.
And
just a little reminder that at 2 p.m. the Street Network for Brands and Buyers is right here. Please get here at 1:30 if you signed up. If you're a brand buyer, come on over here, come see us at the desks. 1:30 to 1:45. I'd like to get you all in before we start at the dot of 2. If you have not,
Rick, keep it short.
retailer, and you haven't signed up, you can go downstairs and check to see if there's any available tickets, or you can come here, or you can go on your profile, come and see Tara. We'll get it all figured out. That's Brent and buyers and retailers. Speed network.
He's like purposefully talking.
Yes. And that's at 2 o'clock.
I think he's just extra
Get
loud.
early, get a
Like a
table,
megaphone
make
going.
some money.
Sorry about that. Yes, Tyson.
I mean, I think I was pretty much wrapped up there. It's
Yeah.
smalls ratios would probably be the number one. That's obviously correlated to some of the other efficiencies that need to be had in the space. Generally, a lack of light or a lack of crop work or inadequate use of labor, but I would say the majority of waste comes from that.
We don't rehearse any of these conversations, and I think Taylor's sitting there thinking, wow, Tyson is just setting me up. He's knocking HPS, and he's talking, we need to get under canopy lighting to boost up our small. It's all set up there. Like, I don't know if there's some side deal. But
He
before,
teed it up nicely for sure.
yeah, but I'm not going to let you speak right now. I'm hoping that fades away. I want to bring Lyle into the conversation as another consultant, seeing a lot of different spaces. And really, what are you bringing to this equation around sustainability and optimizing efficiencies for growers?
Yeah, so in terms of being a consultant, I think we're probably in a different direction. Our main focus with our company, with 3 owner-operators, we've all been in the industry for 20 plus years. Our main focus is bringing legacy growers into the legal market. So most of the growers we're working with have been growing longer than me sometimes, right? And they're really good at what they do, or generally speaking, they're really good at what they do. But for the most part, they have not run a business. They have not worked with accountants. They've been in a cash industry. So as far as sustainability goes with a lot of the clients that I'm working with, it's not environmental sustainability. It's not, tweaking efficiency of lighting. It's how do we just keep this business alive, and how do we run a business? There's a lot of things that are just brand new, and it's not everybody, right? The other day I had a conversation with somebody about the stomata of the plant, so they understand the science. We're diving into it, and then I've got another person that I'm working with who has realistically doesn't PH their res, but they've been doing this so long, they're just doing it by feel, right? So when I'm trying to build sustainability in these businesses, it's from the ground up, and it's a really holistic approach. Like my favorite new quote I just got from my father-in-law is, if your business is not paying you a salary, it's a hobby. And this is like a cold reality for a lot of these, for a lot of people, not just these people, just everybody, that you need to look 5 years forward, not 5 weeks forward. And that's really the main goal behind what we're trying to bring and help people with is you need an accountant, you need a lawyer, you need all of these things, right? What, like WorkSafe BC, a lot of our clients are in BC.
Right.
No idea what any of these things are. So a lot of the time I'm there to help people increase their yields and increase their efficiency with labor and all of that. But that's not the main focus that I'm trying to achieve. It's just really a holistic approach to, you are now running a business, and it is a cash commodity business, but you're not working with cash anymore. And we need to account for all these things.
Well, then, and you're not working with $2,400 a pound. You're working now with maybe $700-800 a pound.
Right.
How is that translating to what you bring to them?
So I would say like that is in the past. So a lot of legacy growers are dealing with actually getting sub $1 a gram right now. And they're coming over and they see the kind of, to them at this point, flashy prices of the legal industry. What needs to be educated on is the excise tax and the fact that, you know, if somebody's getting 250 gram wholesale for large, it doesn't mean you're going to. Right. You need to meet the right people. You need to make the right introductions, and you need to be actually growing what they've kind of asked you to grow. So that's a big switch for them as well. They're not just getting to grow their favorite legacy cuts, which half the time end up being 16% THC, and 4% terps. Still beautiful weed, right? But it's a big change for them. Another big one would be switching to like a more current IPM program and not using all of the illicit pesticides that have been helping, you know, PGRs, Avid, all of these things. They've been helping them achieve the yields and quality that they're used to, and now they've got to deal with like diffs and all of these other things to help prevent stretch and their small to large ratio and all of that, right?
Oh yeah, that's cool. That's great.
Yeah.
You know, Tyson, you've already touched upon the environmental sustainability. It's a tough industry to be environmentally sustainable, and so I'm going to bring in Tom. Now, Tom is a regenerative farmer and award-winning.
Sure.
I want to add that in there because I forgot to mention that Chris Crosby was the standard producer of the year at Land of Cultivation at the last thing. So I just want to mention the East Can Pineapple Bang Bang, right? Was the Cannabis New Brunswick Flower of the Year, or was it? Is it a Flower of the Year? So, yeah. So Tom is, you want to share a little bit about your growing strategy and how you bring an environmental lens to cannabis cultivation.
Sure. I've been owner and operator of my own micro since 2019. So it's already been almost 7 years. And since the beginning, I've basically been chasing efficiency and sustainability. So now I'm at the point where I'm almost completely closed loop. So I've just been, again, chasing price per gram and gram per square foot. So I thought it might be interesting to tell you a little bit about my SOP from clone to harvest really quickly. So we veg our veg plants in 6x6 plastic pots with organic soil for a few weeks. And then when it grows in the grow room, it's on beds The pots are bottomless, so we put it straight on the beds. There's no labor for transplanting, anything like that. It's done super quick. Then we apply compost that we make in-house. So all of our cannabis waste, every single thing goes in a compost SOP. So we re-amend with the compost. Right before the reamendment, we actually do lab testing on our soil. So, of course, the flower that we sell takes up nutrients. So we do top dress to address that. And then we go basically right to harvest with just minimal input, reusing everything closed loop. We also have very efficient lighting with under canopy lighting. So you brought a really important point of less smalls is very important. And finally, we contract grow. So we know exactly what we're growing for who. So we never have any inventory in stock. So we grow, we ship. And I think it's just about the most efficient that you could be. And before I end too, I think that the yield per square foot is extremely important. And we're actually able to be on par with, I would say, the best hydro growers. We get close to 100 grams per square foot, full regenerative organic indoor.
That's great. That was Tom being less nerdy because he goes into an amazing amount of detail when it comes to his living soil. He's actually gone out and collected a lot of his sand, silt, and clay material. He's designed. I think that you're very public about this, so I don't think I'm breaking any confidences. It's a pretty laborious project that he's been involved with.
It has to do again with efficiency too, because quickly the main reason that my beds are built as they are built with 3 horizons is for how water moves in the soil. So how I water my plants, my beds are on trays, and we flood the bottom of the beds in the trays. And if you have your soil correct with those 3 horizons, it will wick the water perfectly. So there's basically no calculation on how we crop steer. It's all done in an automated way. As the plants drink, they get their water.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, especially when you think of the cannabis plant originating along riverbeds. And then this idea of composting. So he's just composting his leaf material. He's shared the analysis with me, and I go, oh, this is just way too much potassium. Like, you are potassium through the roof. This is never going to work. And yet he's producing award-winning cannabis. So it kind of shows how cannabis regenerates itself. It dies down in nature. It dies down, comes back up, dies down, comes back up. And I think you're mimicking that. And
last point though about potassium is, okay, if you analyze the compost that you're creating nutrient wise, it might look off balance. But when you actually amend it to the soil and then you test the soil itself, it's amazing how the nutritional balance stays very accurate.
Yeah. Yep.
So we're not just being hippies about it. Like we're really also scientific.
Yeah.
So if you want to hit that yield per square foot, it's serious business.
Sweet. Sword, you want to? It's through a Malic 3, so that would be somewhat plant available. The question was how is that a soluble or plant available form of potassium, and it would be through a mild acid, so it would be plant available. And you touched upon under canopy lighting. I am going to bring in my resident lighting expert. Taylor, do you want to share a little bit about what Tyson was saying in terms of the transition between HPS and LED, as well as perhaps something around under canopy as well?
Absolutely. So first of all, such a broad topic. I mean, what you're doing is a passion of mine. We talked about, it's a hobby if you're not getting paid a salary. So I am getting paid a salary by Fluence. That's why I'm here. But personally, I love what you're doing on the regenerative front. The small craft growers, that's where my heart's at. But yeah, I'm here to talk about sustainability from an operational standpoint, what Fluence has been focused on over the past couple of years. A new product development has been geared all around the efficacy of the fixtures that we bring to market. And we've taken 7 years of research that we've done and kind of steered it to the new spectra that we've developed, the new products that are, specifically one we call Raptor 2 T48. That's our second generation Raptor, which is a tunable spectrum. We have the ability to go from 40% red to 80% red and provide recipes for our customers to be able to see a more efficient lighting system than a traditional broad white spectrum LED.
And what is that range of efficiency when you go from 40% to an 80% in terms of the DLI or the
it's extremely variable depending on how you use it, but we basically came up with a strategy to save you 27% of the energy used with a broad spectrum by manipulating the red value. So in short, what we would do is you would start your crop out with a high red spectrum, and then you would shift to a broad white, and then you'd finish with a high red.
Sweet.
Without giving all the special sauce. That's essentially what we're doing. We've taken this research that we've done on photo bleaching, understanding the crop sensitivity to a high red, and we've pushed the high red when we can and the white when we need to. I guess we have a question.
You keep going.
And so she's got an immediate question. Go ahead.
Do the red influence the far reds at all, or is it just?
Good question. When I'm talking about red, it's usually within the par spectrum, so it's not far red. We're using a more efficient par spectrum to achieve that. So yeah. Under canopy, that brings us to like a whole new, hot topic, and it is really efficient way to add more light to your grow. You already have top lighting, and now you're adding under canopy. You're boosting your smalls. You're creating a better quality of harvest there for yourself. And so, and we can do that as well with very efficient spectra as well, because we're using lower light intensity. So you can use a high red under canopy light, not having any concerns really with photo bleaching as well.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. Any other things that you wanted to bring up on Tom?
There's just so much. I know we have limited time. One of the things I was thinking about from like a cultivation standpoint is, and it's not new at all, the concept of no veg. It goes back to the sea of green style of cultivation that's been around for 30 years or whatever, longer. If you think about your traditional commercial facility, roughly 20% of the space is dedicated to veg. And if we can look to new strategies like propagating cuttings that are immediately flipped into flower, or seedlings that are grown to 5 nodes and then flowered immediately, you can now convert veg space to productive flower space. So you're being more efficient, sustainable in your operation if you're going down that route. It isn't for everybody, depending on the genetics, your cultivation preferences, but it's definitely something to be thinking about.
And I think it corresponds with your lighting recipe that you just gave, red, white, red. It makes a lot of sense. Wouldn't recommend it if you couldn't control your spectra necessarily. I think that would perhaps lead to increased photo bleaching if you didn't have that white in between. Andrew, I wanted to jump back to you because I know that you had you got a thesis here to deliver. Do you want to share some of your other points around sustainability?
Yeah, as I was listening to everyone speak here, I started to reflect and really synthesize where sustainability is in the industry right now. And a lot that I'm hearing here is the advancements in regenerative cultivation, which is incredible here, like 100 grams per square feet, dude. Amazing. A lot of the challenges here in environmental sustainability is quite honestly based on the farming practices, cultivation, and the regulations that we have to abide by. And another major factor too is the economical sustainability of this industry. Now that we're seeing other countries enter the market share in Europe, specifically like Thailand and South Africa, we are seeing prices drop down to $1 to $1.50 for export now, where labor cannot be competed here in Canada. So there is a lot to really consider on what this industry will look like 10 to 15 years from now. And truthfully, we just have to make it clear, cannabis farming is agriculture. Everyone here is speaking about it like farming. This is the honest truth about this industry. And that provides a solution. There is a solution to all of this. And this is what's really exciting about this too. Much of the work involved with the Federation of Cannabis Farmers is to really help align these farmers to unify their voices and be able to recognize this plant as agriculture. And with that, by aligning with one of the organizations we have close relationships to, we will be able to protect farmers by placing tariffs on imported farmed goods. This is very well known to protect many dairy farmers, chicken farmers, greenhouse growers, grain growers, supply managed commodities. And they can place up to 300% tariffs to protect farmers here in Canada. This is incredibly important to consider down the road. And economical sustainability is what I'm hearing from these expert panelists here. And I'm just really grateful to be here. So thank you.
That's an interesting topic. That's a new topic totally to the commodification and looking at supply managed cannabis production. And that's why I think it would be interesting to look at this at a provincial breakdown and see which markets are overly saturated in their production and stuff. And Tyson had the other solution that eventually we would be all growing outdoors. Now, I want to bring it a little bit back to environmental sustainability and love to hear anyone's opinions on, we're here with CANNA. They've got, I think the CANNA Coco Flex is really becoming a very popular media. But, I would imagine that an equal share of the market is probably in Stonewall. And then there would be the aeroponics, aquaponics, and LSO type people, where we aren't doing much around the recycling or composting of any of these media. Do you see that there's a movement around any of that, or do you think that is something that, if we were a sustainable industry economically, we might have some energy towards that? Do you see this happening? Tyson, Lyle, anyone want to?
This is a tough one because a lot of people feel that Rockwell is significantly more steerable. When we talk about hydroponics, right? Obviously, living soil. If everybody could do what he was doing, I would suggest that everybody go that way. But you're a special breed.
Yeah.
Honestly, I've seen living soils across the board, and I've converted living soil facilities, one in Pemberton, across the board, and I've tripled the yield. And
that's why I mentioned yield per square foot. So it's very important that if you're going to go that route, you figure out how to make that happen.
Yeah.
Because if you can't, well, you better go to what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And so I do find it really disheartening that there is no recycling plant for Rockwell. But the cocoa manufacturers need to get it together a little bit too, because the homogeneity of what's coming in is super unpredictable with all kinds of unpredictable outcomes. And including pests coming in with the material.
Right,
And
right.
so, when your business is on the line, I unfortunately am a proponent for rock wool simply because of the steerability, the results that I've seen performed, and the lack of a variable in an already heavy variable business. So,
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, Lyle, you want to share?
Yeah, I'd love to touch on this. So my farm in BC, we do use cocoa. We don't use CANNA. We use Medicore. Pretty consistent, but you're right. There is variability, obviously. What is really nice about using cocoa at my farm, though, is it's a farm. It goes in the field.
That's it.
We have chicken coops. We have, we've got room to just get this out. It just goes right back into the earth. Obviously we are using salt nutrients, but at the point of harvest, they are so minimal that we're not affecting the waterways or the riparian zones or anything like
Right.
that. So I am a huge proponent of cocoa if you can get rid of it. I've worked with grows that are right in city centers and it's going to the dump.
Mhm.
So it might as well be rock wool. Yeah, yes, it's reusable, rock wool's from the earth. But if you are on a farm situation where you've got some acres, I love cocoa for that exact purpose, right? It literally, yes, it comes in a bag. Hopefully those bags are compostable or recyclable, but there is almost no waste. The root balls are going out there. It's turning
Yeah.
into compost. We're not reusing it in our grow. I'd love to. We've talked about doing an outdoor grow on our property as well. But pretty much every client that we use is using cocoa for one reason or another. I do agree with the steerability of rock wool. Like I talk to people about this every day. You can dial in rock wool so much better than cocoa. But when you're working on a small farm that does not have backup systems in the same way that a larger facility might,
Yeah.
a pump goes out or your pH is off a little bit because your meter went out in a rock wool farm, that could ruin your crop essentially. And if you have all those contingency plans and all of the cash flow and everything to prevent that, amazing. I would say go with rock wool because you can tweak it so well. But most of the farms I'm working with are much smaller, much more like, I don't want to say more craft, but it is, family businesses,
Right.
owner operators, the master grower, the head of security in the RP, it's the same person.
Yeah.
I do think cocoa works really well there. And then my other thought too was eventually everything's going to be outdoor. One with the import, like you were talking about, this is a conversation I have every day with clients is if America legalizes, like what happens to us? They're not worried about exporting. They're worried about import. And my first answer is cheese. How much do you pay for cheese? Right? Go to Buffalo, go to Toronto. How much you're paying for cheese? There is an answer to this scenario, right? And it is tariffs. Domestically, though, I think outdoor is amazing. We have fertile farmland. We're a massive, beautiful country. But the people going to the store that want to purchase fresh, high-quality cannabis do not want something harvested in October in July. And I know there's autos, and I know there's tweaks, but I do really genuinely think indoor cannabis as a craft product will exist forever.
Yeah, I think you speak about just a generic trend of it's a luxury to look at some of these as a sustainability, environmental sustainability. We're not there because economically this industry is overregulated, overtaxed. So it's a big challenge. I would like to see other companies come in here to see that we've got byproducts. We've got stalks, we've got root balls, we have media that can all turn into something, beneficial for, and I don't see it happening. So that's a little disappointing. You guys can, if you have any other comments, please share. I am going to ask anyone from the audience if you want to come up to the mic and ask a question. This is the time. But anyone wants some?
Yeah, I just want to continue that conversation because it's an interesting one that I have a lot as well. But if you look at, certainly I don't think that outdoor is going to be the future, but equatorial greenhouse, if you look across the agricultural industry, specifically in say flowers or ornamentals, there's no dispute. across the board. And the problem is that everything's price driven. And so I love what Canada did, although I think it's a hypocrisy that we don't allow imports and we're the exporter. And eventually, I think that'll probably catch up to us. But if you look at the cost of production in Europe, I mean, I have multiple facilities over there. I have 6 clients over there. It is really hard to produce cheap cannabis. And I think the price compression is what's going to kind of drive that. I agree, though, that indoor has a place because it is the most controlled environment that you can possibly have and the highest quality cannabis that we can have. I just don't know where the rubber hits the road with price compression, the evolution of time, and it following a traditional agricultural practice, right? Because ultimately, what is it? Like 80% of the world's flowers are produced in Colombia or something. Like they're just shipping them everywhere across the world, and it doesn't matter about a tariff because they're producing it for like 1/20th of the price or whatever it is. And so I don't think it's fast, but I do think over a 20-30 year period of time, it starts to look like that because it has in everything else, right? Now we have Leamington. You have these greenhouse areas that also produce for the world, which we could take advantage of. But indoor is going to get harder and harder to justify, I think, as prices continue to compress.
I got a kind of a radical idea, and it's I'm a hemp farmer as well.
Yes,
but
right. I forgot to introduce you that way. Yeah.
But I'm not a clothing producer or rope or oils. I grow cannabis flower, but it's low THC. But I think from an indoor non-sustainable cannabis cultivation concept, what if we had a co-op of true industrial hemp farming that we could all invest in and offset the carbon footprint that we're making?
Yep.
I mean, let's be honest, we're using a shitload of CO2 to grow this.
Yeah.
We're doing with a lot of electricity and a lot of waste. We're putting it in non-sustainable packaging. I mean, we are not a sustainable industry at this time. Right. There's some really good actors and people that are just doing killer work and doing their part, but hemp, as Jack Herrera said, it could literally save the world. And there's also this weird, especially in the States right now, there's this infighting between cannabis and hemp, and it's all the same plant at the end of the day. Yeah. So we should stop all that bullshit and just work together and grow more hemp for the world. And that would help a lot.
Well said. Well said. I think that